Hey everyone, and welcome to the Built This Firm podcast. We interview attorneys in various fields of law who have founded and grown law firms. This week, we're sitting down with Robert Manning, a personal injury attorney and founder of Manning Law. Robert, thanks for being here with us.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
So, personal injury law. How'd you get into this game?
I started working in my father's personal injury firm when I was 15 years old. I was a kind of records clerk, file person, carry this to the courthouse, file that.
A gopher.
An absolute gopher.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. So a little bit earlier into kind of the personal injury game than most people. So you're 15 years old, you're doing this, you're running around. Kind of, what was your experience like at that level, besides just doing gopher stuff? Did it kind of energize you? Was it interesting? Like, what's that like?
Well, first of all, I was working for my dad in a small firm in a small town. And so it was a great experience to actually watch people that I knew, because the town was 3,000 people. So Any client was either a friend, cousin, relative, something for somebody. You knew everybody. You didn't get to hide behind anonymity. You had to do a good job for every person that was in front of you. And when it went wrong, you knew about it. So I got to see kind of firsthand a lot of very personal accountability in this practice. And then I also got to see it really make a difference in people's lives.
Well, that's wonderful that you had that kind of personal small town experience, right? And like kind of really learned about client satisfaction and things like that early on. So you're doing this, you go to undergrad. Where'd you go to undergrad?
Grand Valley State University in Western Michigan.
And then assumedly you went on to law school?
I did. I went to DePaul University College of Law in Chicago. While I was there, I worked for a couple different small firms in a couple of different fields, but always kind of came back to personal injury even while I was there. It just sort of felt like a good fit for me all along.
That's interesting. So you have gone to law school, you're working for some other PI attorneys. At what point do you kind of say, all right, this is great, this is what I want to do, I'm going to take the plunge, I'm going to start my own law firm?
I knew that I wanted to start my own law firm basically from the first minute I went to law school. I was one of those people who, my family, if you go back about 3-4 generations, every member of my family has owned their own business in some capacity. So entrepreneurship is really just a part of who we are. So when I started in law, I never really assumed that I would go the big law route or end up in a firm kind of working my way up. It just didn't make sense to me.
Now, the big downtown suits law firm sort of deal never really appealed, or?
It did not appeal to me, though I do like the suits.
That is true. Okay, so you've decided that you're going to start the law firm. What does that look like to actually sort of take the jump, right? And say, okay, there's one thing to say, all right, I'm going to do this, and another thing to like actually start the process. What does that look like? What does that feel like? How does that go?
I was fortunate and went about this differently. My wife and I moved out here from Chicago. She was fortunate.
Out here being Denver.
I'm sorry, Denver.
Yeah.
Yes. And we were fortunate that she found a job that could cover rent, and we were having conversations. And like I said, I never really wanted to go into the big firm and kind of do that sort of thing, but I was willing to until I looked at kind of the salary packages that were available and, how you would move forward in that. And I realized there just wasn't a sufficient path forward. And so it really came down to a conversation with my wife where I said, I really, truly believe I can do better. And that moment, and I was so fortunate because she was absolutely behind me 100%. And turns out you can do better. You don't have to just take what's available, but you do have to face the fact that you're going to be broke for a good long time.
Right. I think that's true of any business. I was reading a thing that the average small business, not even just law firms, don't make any profit for the first 3 years.
I'm not sure if that was true for me, but I got very fortunate. I started the practice on $8,000 in free capital. And when I say free, I mean available capital. And so it was pretty easy to become profitable because I didn't have anything really to invest in it. I had found a good mentor at the time who let me borrow an office in the back of his place where he wasn't using it. And I was able to keep my overhead supremely low. And that allowed for me to take a few chances. That allowed for me to invest money in the cases that I needed to. I was also fortunate to have those mentors where if a case came in that was too big for me to handle, I could look to them I wouldn't have to just get rid of it, but I could share it with somebody. And it really comes down to being able to balance, your overhead with what you're trying to do.
So that's interesting that you bring up mentorship is so important. Would you say that in the logistics of starting up a law firm, would you say that that's an essential step, finding a good mentor and maybe being mindful of finding a good mentor that's right for you at that stage?
Absolutely. I would say that if you are going to start up your own practice, one of the first things you should have is a mentor that you trust, someone that you can go to and ask questions without kind of fear of judgment or without fear of somebody trying to snake something out from under you or any of that. And I was so fortunate to have that in several different ways. I mean, like I said, I started in my father's practice. He was a mentor of sorts for a long time. And as I developed in the practice, I met others who kind of fulfilled different roles. And I still do. I still seek out other attorneys who know more than me, because at any given time, you're never going to know everything you need to. And you have to be able to turn to people. And, sometimes it transfers from mentorship into friendship, but it's no less valuable to be able to make a phone call and make sure you're on the right track.
No, that's definitely a great point. I think mentorship is an often talked about but often undervalued aspect of kind of the entire process, having a been there, done that. So you've started your law firm, right? You've done all the exciting stuff like picked out a name and you set up all your papers and you've got letterhead and everything cool like that. And there comes this moment, I think, and not just law firms, but any business where you're sitting at your desk, you've done all of this, you flip the sign to open, and you go, now what? What's that like? And how did you kind of conquer that initial, like, now what? Getting those first, like, handful of clients, and trying to build out a presence and, like, actually create the business part of it.
I will never forget the first week I was in business here in Denver. And I had 2 or 3 cases to work on that a mentor of mine had given me to kind of get my feet wet and help him out with some things. But other than that, at any given day, if you only have 3 cases, there's not a lot to do for a whole week of work. Especially in personal injury, these things take a long time. So in any given week, the workload's pretty light. So I remember sitting at my desk and just nearly panicking and thinking, well, here I am. What do I do with myself now? And, within an hour or so of just sitting there and not having any idea what to do next, it just becomes clear that, well, the most important thing you can do is go find some work to do. So maybe sitting at your desk isn't the best plan. So, kind of getting up, getting moving, and realizing that all of that other stuff, the letterhead, the logo, the name on the, all of that is secondary to the fact that you need work to do and you need to go get it done.
Right. And so you assumedly went out and found clients. How'd you do that? How'd you hustle your way into your first group of clients?
Other than the ones that this mentor of mine was willing to give me, which was just a few at the beginning. But other than that, I actually threw on, my best suit, and I was looking for personal injury clients, and I tried to find some chiropractors who were in my area. I went geographically from the apartment I was living in at the time and walked in and tried to talk my way through the front desk people and get to the actual chiropractors. I offered to take them out to lunch. I tried to build relationships, and I would go to 2 or 3 networking groups a week. I would be absolutely just constantly driving around, trying to meet people and hoping that maybe, out of 40, 50 people you meet, maybe one will throw a client your way. And that was, in the beginning, pretty much the average. I mean, you had to go through a lot of people to get to any kind of a client.
That's interesting. That those early days of kind of hustling through is something that people often talk about, with kind of a mix of like relief that they aren't doing it anymore and also nostalgia at the same time too. Is that kind of an accurate sort of way of putting it, or?
I do not miss it as much as you would think, but maybe it's still a little bit fresh in my mind. It's so nerve-wracking, and you're walking in, and they, front desk people in a lot of offices are trained to get rid of people doing that. And so it was always a question. If I was going to walk in, was it going to be met with a smiling face or someone who was just really unhappy to see me? But there is a nostalgia to it. There's a freedom to it. Once you have a more steady stream of clients coming in, you're not out there as much. You're not doing that. You're doing a different practice of law. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's some nostalgia to it. I mean, if you asked me if I would trade it for this, the answer would be no. But Yeah, it was a good time.
Right. So, okay, so let's skip forward a little bit, right? You have the office at the back of your mentor's office, right? You are out there hustling, meeting chiropractors and stuff, looking for referrals, taking these guys out to lunch, things like that. What did the inflection point feel like? You know what I mean? When things started kind of hitting this, like, it's kind of, I'm hustling around, I'm trying to find all these clients and stuff like that. What point where you're like, okay, this is like actually really working? Like, this is kind of this inflection point of like, what I'm doing is working and the firm is growing. Kind of what is that like? How does those challenges differ from kind of the really early days?
Well, personal injury is a specific practice in that it takes a long time to start getting paid regularly. Now, a few cases here and there will hit, they'll keep your lights on, you'll keep moving, but it took me into at least 3 years, as you kind of said, to really make the turn to where we had enough capital to start making any other choices than just going out and using my time as the biggest resource.
Right.
And that was sort of the turning point for me, is when I started looking at my caseload and going, wow, I have enough work to do for a while here. I need to start kind of multiplying my own time, because I don't have time to go to 3 networking events every, they're 2-3 hours a piece. I don't have time to do 3 of those a week anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I've just got too much work to do. And then, when it became time to, hire my first assistant, that was a big moment. And when I did that, I thought I only had enough work for her to do about 10 hours a week. And then within about 2 weeks, I realized I could have hired her full time 6 months earlier. And that's been a recurring
testament to your work ethic that you're able to get that much done.
I suppose it's a testament to something.
Okay, so let's talk about, where are we at today? What's the state of the union of Manning Law?
The state of the union is strong. We've invested in some marketing that makes me not have to be out there quite as much, which is bringing in good amounts of clients, and we're able to utilize that for good growth. We have a good staff. We're about to take over another office space here coming into the summer and triple our space.
That's incredible. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. And frankly, we've needed that for a while. It's another one. I tend to make do with things for a little longer than I probably should.
Better than getting into a bunch of commitments, though, that you have to now pay a lot for.
I suppose that's true, too. And other than that, we're growing. We're looking to hire an associate. We're really moving forward. We've had some good results on some good cases, and we've able to do some really good work for some great people.
Well, that's interesting that you bring up that you're looking to hire that first associate. Kind of how does that change the dynamic from, a sole practitioner with like a good support staff and things like that into kind of a multi-attorney firm? Is that going to, think substantively change the culture, substantively change the workflow? What are the considerations that go into that beyond just, we have X work and we need Y help? It's a lot more complex than that, than I think a lot of people give it credit.
Absolutely. It's more than just needing someone to, process stuff you don't want to do, because this is a person with ambitions of their own. It is someone who, brings their own personality to their work, their own work ethic, their own style. And it changes things when you bring on an associate more than simply bringing on support staff. I think because you're giving up some of the day-to-day autonomy on the cases, and you really have to find people that you trust and who are going to do work in a way that you can believe in and that you can keep putting your name on. And that's a big leap of faith.
It's a little scary.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you've got this new associate coming in, and that's a really exciting time. The firm is obviously growing. Things are trending in an upward direction. But that begs the question, what are the problems, hurdles, challenges, opportunities that you're looking towards in the future for Manning Law? What's kind of the goal that you're heading towards, and what is it that you're going to be doing to kind of continue a smooth growth curve?
I think there are 2 main challenges to growing. One is obviously making sure that your pipeline grows with your overhead. You have to make sure that the work is there to do. And that's where we're definitely expanding some advertising. We are moving into fields. There's no way that you're going to, as a small firm, you cannot financially compete with the biggest guys in town. It will never happen. You might as well throw your money in the driveway and light it on fire. But you can find other creative ways to compete, to find your own portion of the market. And that's really important. And as we grow, making sure that we grow proportionally with that piece of the market that we are able to deal with. And the second challenge kind of dovetails with that, is that as the referrals become less direct, as things come in from places you may not know or expect, keeping that same feel. I mean, I've always run this place as if I'm still in my small town, even though I'm not. So you want to make sure that you treat everybody like you're going to see them in church on Sunday, like you're going to see them at the potluck. Like you just have to do that, and maintaining that sort of precision with everybody in your firm. That's going to be a challenge going forward. It's going to be choosing the right people. It's going to be instilling the right culture, and really, making sure that my leadership style reflects that.
That is an interesting topic that you bring up, which is how exactly does one scale a personal touch, right? As you continue to grow, how do you do that? How do you create processes around things so that you have a consistent work product, but also give the autonomy and instill the culture that says, we're very client centric. We're really focused on giving people a great experience and being personal with them. How do you anticipate working on that?
As I said, I think it's a matter of culture within the firm. Personal injury has always had a bad rap of seeing these guys on TV talking about how much money they got for each individual client, and talking about how amazing they are. But my absolute belief is that if you are focused on the client in front of you, and that is the most important person in your world at that moment, if you focus on every client that way, you're going to get them as much recovery as is possible. So making huge promises about, we got this person X amount, we got that person X amount, this sort of thing, is superfluous to the idea that if you treat every case as your most important one, and you talk to them, you communicate with them, you understand their injuries, you understand the accident they were in, or the events that happened to them, that is going to lead to those better results every single time. So with staff, with people who are in your firm, instead of making it about, well, how much money did you get on this case? How much money did you make sure and know everything about that case? Did you know the person you were helping? Did you understand what was going on from a holistic position? And that's going to bring good results and create a personal touch. I really believe that.
Well, I actually really, really like that. I think that that's a really smart way, a really human sort of way of running a law firm, right? Where the process is to be about the people, not necessarily to force people into a mold to maximize firm profitability every single time, right? And that, if you do focus on the people rather than focus on forcing people into your process, that things will work out because you'll get the referrals, you'll get the great client satisfaction, things like that. So that kind of dovetails into my next question, which is, what do you see people doing in the personal injury space that you just wish they would stop? What do other attorneys do that just annoys you to no end?
The mass-produced model of personal injury, it absolutely makes sense if all you're out for is either a payout or to get bought out. There is no question people who do that are making money. You can't argue with it. They've got the helicopters. I don't, right? But it's unfortunate because it brings a certain amount of dishonor to the profession itself, which this profession is so good because you get to fight for the little guy against multi-billion-dollar companies every single day. And yet, when you do that, when you just make it a mass-produced, churn them, get them in, get them out, move through it, all you are is another part of that big system. And you have an opportunity to be more than that.
Live long enough to see yourself become the enemy sort of deal?
I guess that's the way. Yeah, sure. It's everybody starts out with good intentions, but if you lose that focus, you're really going to lose your soul.
Right. Well, I think that's extremely powerful and extremely truthful. I guess the flip side of that coin, what do you see other personal injury attorneys or yourself, what do you really like about the industry you think people should do more of, that you think they should focus on?
Well, specifically here in Denver, we are really lucky to have, over and above any of what I just talked about, there are some amazing trial attorneys who really care deeply, not just, about their clients, about the law that they are arguing, about the system that they work in. And I can't even tell you how many attorneys I've talked to who are extremely knowledgeable about the inner workings of this process, about the way the laws were crafted, about how they work in court and in front of juries. And these people are so passionate. And that's really, we're really lucky here that we have that depth of a bar that you can talk to a lot of attorneys who aren't just phoning it in every day. But it comes down to passion. That's what I would say some of these other attorneys are bringing to the table too, is that, and I'm not the only one who's passionate about this. We're real lucky. We have a lot of people who are, and it's important.
Well, Robert, that's been absolutely eye-opening. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much again. If you're in the Denver area or Colorado and you need help with a personal injury case, look up Manning Law, manninglaw.us. Robert, thank you so much again for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Jeremy.
Thank you, everybody, for listening, and keep building.